I just wanted to address a couple of things that I don't believe have been touched on. And one of them was at the top of the show, you had mentioned the percentages of people that you believed would be affected by these decisions.
No, I didn't. I said nothing of the kind.
What's that?
No. Okay. Yeah, roughly 10% of the population. Yeah,
right,
okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That number was an arbitrary number that was chosen by...
Well, it's the generally accepted number, sir.
What's that?
It's the generally accepted number, between 10 to 15%.
It's generally accepted. It's from a study that was done by Masters and Johnson in 1938. And at that time, there was such a stigma attached to being homosexual in this country that there's no way that they could have done any kind of, scientific study. But in the early 1990s, there were some studies that were done in countries like Denmark and Sweden where there is absolutely no stigma attached to anything sexual. And the numbers have come up time and time again all around the world that this is somewhere around 1.5% to 2%.
Doesn't make a difference what the percentage is.
Well,
that's not the issue.
Well, it does make a difference because...
No, it doesn't make a difference. If one person in this country is denied their rights, then that is wrong.
Well, I'm going to come around to that, about the issue of whether this is a right or not. What it amounts to, and I feel that a lot of Americans are threatened, and a lot of people around the world are threatened. They feel threatened because when this small percentage of people, even if it is 10%, if I give you the 10%, that's still a very small number of people. Realistically, though, like I said, it's somewhere around 1.5% to 2%. And when these people are getting very vocal and loud and in our face about things, demands that they want met, and... things that you take for granted. What's that?
Like things that you take for granted, that's their only demand.
Well, to talk about the question that opened the show, how does this affect my marriage? I really think that, the House of Representatives and all are a little out of line asking that question. It's not really the question that needs to be asked. To answer it right off, because hardly anybody's been answering the question for you, I've been married 15 years, and this is no threat to my marriage, okay? But what this amounts to is that there has been an infiltration of certain segments of society, namely the school system and the media, of the, people sympathetic to the homosexuals or homosexuals openly themselves. And, you see, this is an unnatural behavior.
Let me see if I understand this correct. Infiltration is a very, very strong word. So you're telling me that people who don't really want to be school teachers take these really crappy jobs so they can push homosexuality in the schools.
I believe that because this is an unnatural and perverse use of our bodies.
That's unnatural for you. It's unnatural for me.
No, it's
I'm sure you do things that I consider to be unnatural.
Nature has set up certain parameters that, cannot be violated any more than we could violate the law of gravity. The law of gravity is a natural law. This law of sexual activity and all is also a natural law.
Really?
You cannot breed. You cannot reproduce after your own kind.
Did you masturbate when you were a kid?
What's that?
Did you masturbate when you were a kid?
Did I masturbate when I was a kid?
Yeah.
I don't understand how this is going to relate to it.
Well, you weren't doing it with a woman, so I guess you're unnatural too and perverse.
That's not the point.
You were participating in sexual activities that weren't with a woman.
No, that's not the point.
No, it is the point.
The purpose is...
No, it is the point. So you're an unnatural, perverse human being too.
No.
Oh, you didn't masturbate. Never masturbated. What I'm saying
is, let's say, for instance,
Why don't you want to answer the question? Did you masturbate or not? Yes, no.
Well, that's not what the question...
No, it is the question.
Those kinds of questions.
You're not going to answer those kinds of questions on the radio.
Right.
Well, if we met at a bar, would you tell me?
No, that's not something that...
Makes you pretty uptight, doesn't it?
That has nothing to do with the show.
An incredibly common practice. Oh, it has everything to do with the show. You just told me that having sex, except with a woman, is unnatural and perverse.
What I'm saying is that...
So I well understand why you're, afraid to admit to masturbating, because you're an unnatural and a perverse person.
It's not a matter of fear. It's not a matter of if I'm afraid to admit to anything. What it amounts to is that anything that is an unnatural type thing...
Like masturbation, like you did when you were a kid.
Huh?
Like masturbation, like you did when you were a kid, yeah.
Possibly that, that could be considered an unnatural thing.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's move on from that. I'm not really interested in talking about masturbation. I want to talk about where this would take the country if this type of legislation were passed. And it's not so much a threat to the marriage. That's why I don't feel that question is valid. What it's a threat to is society as a whole. Because the only way that homosexuals are going to be able to increase their numbers is to recruit. And because they have...
Well, sir, some people just are homosexual. 1.5%, 2% for sure.
Those were the ones that were considered to be, a free... a free type action.
And none of them were recruited.
There's no link to any kind of biological thing.
And none of them were recruited. So you see, you were wrong when you said that the only way they can increase their numbers is to recruit. No, that's not true. You know that's not true. There's some people who just are homosexual, period.
That's not what I said. I did not say that 1.5% are born homosexual. None of them are born homosexual.
Really?
There is no evidence whatsoever that anyone has ever produced to show that.
No, sir. There's there's no evidence whatsoever that anyone has ever produced that anyone was ever recruited.
Oh, yes, there is.
No, there isn't,
Certainly
sir.
There is.
Maybe in your church, but not in the real world.
No. This is. You ask any of the homosexuals that are calling. How they got involved with this.
Yeah.
And it's they'll each have their own story, I'm sure. Just the same way.
Then I assume if we kidnapped you and put you through a vigorous brainwashing, we could turn you into a homosexual.
Under certain circumstances, that could possibly be true.
You know it's not true. You know it's not true. It's not even close to true. We couldn't make you gay if we tried.
You can influence people, and especially at a younger age. This movement is nothing more than an attempt to legitimize...
Sir, I happen to remember being young, and I happen to remember what was on my mind, and it wasn't another boy. And there was nothing you could have done to make me want a boy.
This is nothing
like, remember when you closed your eyes and masturbated? You know what you were seeing in your mind. Wasn't a boy, was it? Not once.
I'm not going to answer those questions. I mean, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the effect that this type of legislation will have on the country. And they are simply, time after time, whether it's in the military...
So let me see, if we allow them insurance rights and property rights and things of that nature...
They have every right to insurance. No homosexual
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon.
No, they are not.
I beg your pardon, sir. If your domestic partner wants to stay home and tend to the house, you cannot, under most state laws... cover them under insurance.
You can purchase that insurance.
Sir.
You can purchase the insurance.
Sir.
What they're wanting is it for free.
Yeah, no, sir. What they wanted is this. No, sir. What they want is the same way that you have it.
Included.
They don't want it for free,
benefit.
Sir.
Okay.
Or they want it as a company benefit, just like you have it.
This is a company, though. This is a company.
That has made an arbitrary decision to cover you and your family.
No. Here's the thing. I'm in my shop right now. I'm self-employed. Okay? If I choose to not hire a homosexual, that is my business. And it is a preference that, I'm not going to hire one. If I am providing one of my employees with
How do you know, by the way, how do you know if somebody's homosexual?
How would I know?
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ways. Sometimes they just admit it.
Yeah. And what if they don't?
If they don't, then they could probably trick me. I'm a fairly trusting person.
Uh-huh.
So what it amounts to is when I say that I'm a trusting person, basically, I'm not paranoid about this thing. I'm seeing it happening. I have 2 kids in public school, and they are constantly hammered with this stuff. And it is part of the NEA, the National Education Association's agenda to promote these kinds of lifestyles.
No, they're not promoting these kinds of lifestyles, sir. What they're trying to do is undo the damage that people like you have done. They're not promoting. They're not asking your kids. They're not asking your kids.
They are recruiting.
They are not recruiting, sir. That is a bald-faced lie. They're not asking your kids to consider the homosexual lifestyle. Your kids have never been asked that.
They've never been asked what?
To consider the homosexual lifestyle by the NEA. or any member thereof, or anyone who is affiliated with them in any shape, manner, or form, have never asked your children to consider the homosexual lifestyle.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you make this one of your talk show questions and have people call in...
Sir, don't tell me what to make one of my questions or what to have people call in about. If you think that you can do the show better than I can, I would strongly suggest you send a tape and a resume to Opie-Dopey.
Because what you're talking is conjecture.
No, sir. No, what you're talking is bullcrap. The NEA has never suggested to any child in this country that they consider the homosexual lifestyle.
They make an environment where people would be able to do this openly.
And what's the problem with that, sir?
They openly practice this.
No, they don't openly practice it. They tell people that it is a fact of life that some people are homosexual. That's what they tell them, sir. It is a fact of life. Some people are homosexual.
Personally, I do not want them teaching my kids those kinds of facts. Those are
you don't want them teaching your children the truth?
It's not the truth.
It is the truth.
That's what I'm saying.
It is the truth, sir. You've already told me some people are homosexual.
Some people are, yes.
Yeah, so that's what they teach them.
That is not an alternative lifestyle to be considered legitimate in any manner.
Sir, I believe you're the only one that ever called it an alternative.
It is a perverse...
Sir, I beg your pardon. You're the only one that ever called it an alternative. A homosexual doesn't call it alternative. Because an alternative... No, sir, an alternative lifestyle, sir, would imply that it's a choice.
And that's exactly what it is. It's not a biological thing.
Sir, homosexuals don't think it's a choice. They sure as hell wouldn't teach a kid that it was.